Hey, family. Wow, am I so excited about our guest today. It's kind of weird calling John a guest because it's more like having a family member come home. I've learned so much from John Hope Bryant over the years, and we've enjoyed so much of our journey and success together. He's taught me things that have been dynamic to how I'm living today and how I continue to learn. And today he's going to be talking with us about his newest book, Up From Nothing. It's the untold story of how we all succeed. If you Google John, you're going to find some of these things said about him. John Hope Bryant is founder, chairman, and CEO of Operation Hope, Inc. He's the CEO of Bryant Group Ventures and co-founder of Global Dignity. He's been recognized by 5 U.S. presidents and served as an advisor for 3 of them. He is the recipient of hundreds of awards and citations for his work, including American Banker's 2016 Innovator of the Year. He's Inc.'s World Top 10 CEOs, honorable mention with that, and Times 50 for the Future. John is the author of 3 best-selling books, The Memo, How the Poor Can Save Capitalism, and Love Leadership. And today, I get the thrill of having him talk about his 4th book, Up From Nothing. Enjoy, John.
Joining us right now is one of America's most successful female entrepreneurs.
Special guest speaker today, the first African-American woman
to own a billion-dollar company. Her name is
Janice Bryant Howroyd. She's the founder and CEO of
Act One is one of the largest staffing companies in the United States.
She's now ranked by Forbes as second wealthiest self-made African-American woman in America, behind only Ms. Oprah Winfrey.
Janice, great to have you on the show.
Wonderful to be here.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Janice, welcome to the program.
Janice, what about your point?
John, it's always such a pleasure to talk with you. I mean, goodness. And look, we've been communicating more since we've been under distance than we did before. I guess we've really had to focus in on the things and the people who matter the most right now, huh?
Yes, yeah. Crisis creates also opportunity. Rainbows only follow storms, as you well know. So
yeah, well, listen, you are bringing some information that I want to dive right in. I committed to our family today that we're going to be talking about Up From Nothing, which is, according to you, the untold story of how we all succeed.
yeah.
It's riveting in terms of just waiting to be made into a documentary, a movie, but people need it right now, and I'm so glad it's print. John, you talk about why you needed to do this book. I think the title even speaks to it. And your life has just been such a series of answering questions before they occur and then being there in the moment. Did you predict this book would be coming out around this time when so many people need it?
No, I think our mentor, Ambassador Andrew Young, would say the coincidence is God's way of staying anonymous.
Yeah.
Well,
God.
This is the universe speaking, not me.
And you so get that the minute you open the book. Listen, you've broken this book down into different elements that are going to be easy for people to jump forward in the chapters. But what's the big message you want? What is it people need to know?
You know, the book is not about, you know, what's typical. How does an individual succeed? Who's special? How does somebody motivate themselves? How do you get rich? All these little vignettes are not scalable. And I wanted to write a book that was open source software for the world. I wanted to write a book that you and I could relate to, but also cousin Pookie could relate to.
Right.
Pookie them. I wanted to write a book that made African Americans proud, but didn't make my white friends, sort of get defensive and rear back. I wanted to write a book that made so much common sense you couldn't reject it. And so I don't deal with race, even though racism is huge. I deal with class, which I think drives racism. I deal with math because to me that and formulas. So I think the big aha in this book, there's several of them, but one of them is the 5 pillars of success. I actually put a gauntlet down and I specifically say that there are, 3 examples of groups that were underserved who succeeded. Caribbean Blacks, Black Africans who came from on their own volition from Africa here, Caribbean Blacks who came from Caribbean islands here, and let me just throw a group in, my Jewish brothers and sisters who came here and succeeded. Then you got 3 groups who got nailed: African Americans who are Black just like Black Africans, Black just like Black Caribbeans. You can't tell the difference just only looking at them. Native American Indians, and poor whites. And I mixed these groups up intentionally, Janice, so that no one could say, yeah, but. I don't want to give anybody an excuse to go sit down and say, no, this is all rigged, I can't win. And so I went through a formula of the 5 things that made the first group, in spite of racism, discrimination, bias, sexism, all the isms, in spite of that those 3 groups as a whole, even with oppression sitting on top of them, still won as a group. And this other 3 groups I mentioned, poor whites, African Americans, and Native American Indians, have not succeeded as a group. There have been outliers like you and me and others we can name.
And John, when you say African Americans, you're talking about those who are up from slavery.
Came here against their will or not with their own self-determination. Came here and were enslaved. They weren't slavery, they were enslaved. And the process of enslaving somebody requires a formula also, Janice.
Yes.
All right. And that formula messed up our head.
Mm-hmm.
And what I'm trying to do with this book, I'm trying to get your head right again. I'm trying to get you back in the game with the right mental framework, the right mental business plan for an individual to succeed, a family to succeed, a block, a community. I'm going to be bold, a city and a country. I believe the business plan is a business plan for you and your household, but it's also the business plan for America.
2 things you provoke for me, John, because number one, Ambassador Young does say that this book is so important at the local level, and you go on to teach that it's what we do at the local level and without what we do at the local level that dynamically impacts the whole of us, whether that's our economy, our social systems, our body politics. It all impacts us, but it starts at the local level, as will how an adult will succeed is impacted dynamically by what's happening when they're young. I'll even progress it to say, which is my second point, why I'm so excited about this book and why I'm reading it ferociously is.
Hold on, Janice, go back to the first point you just said about the local level. It's you. Act One and your company is based in Southern California.
Yeah.
But you're also one of the top 100 Black-owned businesses in America.
Mm-hmm.
And while you're based in California, you employ people across the country. While you're based there in California, you hit GDP, gross domestic product. You're an employer there. You're an economic actor there. You pop the economic activity in your city, but you also are part of the state's receipts. You're also part of the national activity. You've now become a national leader. What you've done there in Southern California has vibrations, economic vibrations, and spiritual and emotional, and I think even policy vibrations across the country. So you are literally an example of what we just talked about, which is can somebody local have an impact that's national and global? You're looking, your audience is looking at it right now. I don't want to get.
But I want you to dig in a little bit and get us ready, all of us, because as you said, you're speaking to the collective body of who we are. Okay, as America, as the world. Here's where I want you to get us platformed so we're all at that same place. You said you want Pookie and them to understand this, as well as someone who's leadership, at the national or international level. And you've done that dynamically. You've heard me say, John, that it is as recent now I think when you and I did our fireside chat at Hope, I was saying 4 years, but you've heard me say it's as recent as 5 years ago that I forgave myself for being Black, female, and smart at the same time. You talked just a few minutes ago about how important it is how we cooperate with what we've been taught about slavery or about economic impact, or whether we are poor whites from the mountains in North Carolina where I grew up, or poor Blacks on the street where I grew up. We all have this cooperation with a dynamic. You know, my folks, your folks, we say it's not what they call you, it's what you answer to. Sometimes we're calling ourselves that when it's not required. And so to get us ready for up from nothing, and to really understand the lessons you're teaching us, because you said this is what everybody can use for success. So a prescription for everybody, when each of us may bring different harm or conditions to it, it becomes necessary, I think, for us to clean up some of what really is and what we bring ourselves. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Well, hurt people. And just like success is nurtured and cultivated, so is failure. Just like, poverty is passed down. A poverty mentality is passed down with the best of intentions. No matter how much I love you, my son or my daughter, if I don't have wisdom, I can only give you my own ignorance.
Woo!
No matter how much I love you, my son or my daughter, no matter how much I love you, if I don't have wisdom, I can only give you what I've got. I can only give you my own ignorance. And so out of love, we pass down bad habits from generation to generation with good intentions. But it's what we don't know that's killing us, but we think we know. And so I'm a businessman because my father was a businessman and my mother was a businesswoman. I have a collaborative relationship with my wife where where my revenue is meant to take care of us, and then some other activity, my wealth building, is created to create a future generational wealth for us. And then she has a purpose for the money that she makes, which is separate from the purpose of what. But when I was growing up with my mom and my dad sort of, his job was to make a living. My mother's job was to create a life. Mm-hmm. So her money had a different purpose. The money she made went to go put a down payment on a house, to buy some real estate. My dad was hustling to make sure that we got the bills paid. Before that, my father's father, my grandfather, R.B. Smith, who I put in the book, owned a farm in 1940. He was born in 1871. He was born into the tail end of slavery. And I'm now doing research on my great-grandfather, and I'm not going to be surprised if he was also an enterprising individual as well. In other words, I'm not a genius here, Janice. I'm role modeling.
Well, no, you are a genius. However, I think the bigger point is you're not leaning on your genius from an academic perspective. You're leaning on your relationship to people that allows us to reveal our own genius. And I mean, you coming up from the beginnings you had, John. I mean, when I look at the profile, it's so amazing to understand the friendship we have, where you never brought any of that out in terms of bragging. You were always teaching, and you were always sharing other people as examples and not yourself as an example. I want to get into these 5 pillars of success, though, because they example dynamically not just how you've learned and what you've seen from others, but what you've actually done yourself. You say massive education, financial literacy, strong family structure, self-esteem, and supportive role models. Now, when people read that, many people, even people we see today who are framed as successful, many people don't have that. But you teach in a way in your book where they can create that, especially if they care about any generation beyond themselves. Can we start to dig into that?
Yes. So now we're starting to get into the meat of the matter. So we've talked about, so there's 3 mindsets. There's so much in this book, because I just jammed everything in here, trying to give people a real trigger to pivot their life around. There's three types of people in every household and every company. There's a cook, there's a hunter, the skinner, and the cook. There's three types of mentalities: surviving, thriving, and winning. All right. And and then there, by the way, under the hunter, skinner, cook, there's also a fourth group that's called the spectator. You really, other than going to a sports game after you finish working, you don't want to be in the spectator category. It pays nothing, and it charges you everything. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't create ownership. You got to decide whether you're the hunter, the skinner, or the cook. You and I are the hunters, okay? But when I get home, by the way, my wife turns into the hunter. But in order to create the environment we have at home, she's also the cook. I don't mean literally a cook. I mean, she's turning the house into a home.
Right.
But you also cannot have in that household one person who's got a surviving mentality and one person has a winning mentality. That's in conflict with each other. And there's too many of our people that are in a surviving mentality. The surviving mentality has us out there protesting, understandably so. But you got to shift from that protesting mentality to you got to go from the streets to the suites. Because the only people with a winning mentality build something, build a community, build a company, build wealth, build a family, build your.
Hey, John, go back and distinguish between and forgive me. I just really, everything you say is so important, and I think it needs to progress for our family listening. Yeah. So we've got the survivors, and you've spoken to that. Yeah. Bring us to the distinction between thriving and winning. Sure. Many people believe thriving is winning. No. And it may be winning 101, but you're talking about ultimately winning.
Yeah, so you're brilliant because you know before I said it. Thriving is winning 1.0. But in order to truly build, you need winning 3.0. So, and I haven't even got to the 5 pillars, which is the key to everything. I'll pivot to that in a minute, but I wanted to get some undercurrent here. So I think I've never said this on any broadcast, any media interview. I'm saying it to you first. I'm going to start talking about this endlessly, but I'm saying to you first now. I think, Janice, we're in a third reconstruction. In this. Mm-hmm. The first reconstruction was triggered by the Civil War. And for a year after the Civil War, you had one more progress in a year than you had than 200 years for free blacks. But then it just stopped like a dime because there was no economic and political empowerment that came after that. And then Reconstruction was stopped by the president that came after Lincoln, which was Andrew Johnson, who I think was just horrible. And then you had the second Reconstruction, which picked up from the first one after a 100-year pause. That was Dr. King, my mentor, Andrew Young, Coretta Scott King, Dorothy Height. And that was about political empowerment, the right to vote, the reaffirmation of your democracy as the power, as royalty. And it created the middle class through professions.
Hey, John, some of us call that the right to buy, not the right to sell.
That's right. So we create people who cash checks, not write them. Mm-hmm. There's nothing wrong with that. America needs that. America needed the middle class. The white middle class basically it started after the New Deal, but it really codified after the Marshall Plan after World War II, where the GI Bill gave mostly previously poor white or struggling white as much education you can shove down your throat. That's one of my 5 pillars. An apprenticeship for a new job for the future, and enough money to buy out and put a down payment on a home. That created the explosion of the white middle class. The black middle class came after, really, World War II created the professions for black people: dentists, lawyers. This was all through the military. So we got the right to vote, the right to put who we wanted in office, political empowerment, and we got the black middle class and black working class at scale. And we got educated and did all that stuff. That's the thriving of America. The middle class is the key to democracy. It's the key to political empowerment. The current vote that's going to happen in a month here in this country. It's going to be really rely on the middle class who outvote everybody else because they have a stake in the outcome, because no one washes a rental car. If you don't own anything, you typically are not really concerned all that about it. So
And John, let me ask you, not to pivot, but can you give us an aside real quick? Owning the right to vote. So many people now, and I mean the conversations I'm having, people are asking this. So please, just take this moment to speak to it from how you see it, which is a very well-informed position you have. I think dynamically because you engage. Here's the thing. We all have a vote. And now the question is, and I think it fits under the conversation we're having about Up From Nothing, because your political currency may be a lot stronger than your financial currency and seeded in many ways if you manage it well. It certainly impacts each of our financial currency, our political currency engaged well. Here's the question. We all have a vote. How does gerrymander and electoral college play into that vote, just to get people on the right page to understand, because that's part of your education, just as much education as you can consume. People talk about whether we've been educated, or what is it, Lauryn Hill says, miseducated. Talk about that a little bit, get us all on the same page to understand.
The problem is that most people don't even understand what you just said. Gerrymandering and basically playing with voting districts and voting blocks, and then that is just amplified by social media feeding you the information that you've already indicated you're interested in. So you only learn that what you already know. You only get more information based on what you already believe, and so now you're in this. In some ways, the most valuable asset today is your social ID and the data analytics that are tied to that, and that's owned by the social media companies, not by you. That's a whole nother conversation. It's almost more valuable than everything but real estate today. And people are trading us without our knowledge. So also with gerrymandering a vote, you're being in some ways disenfranchised, and your political representation is being played with. But all this conversation requires, we have to realize you cannot have the leader of the free world with basically 50% of the people who are high school educated. One of the things that happened in World War II is you had this surge of college education, higher education. With more education comes freedom from a lot of bias, a freedom from backwards thinking, freedom from ignorance. Education frees you, exposure liberates you.
And creates a commonality where there was not one before. Correct. So half of this country is high school educated. Now you've got political forces playing on that ignorance, directly and indirectly. They're assaulting you because they know you don't. This is like this. We're talking about financial literacy. This is basic literacy, or this is political illiteracy. This is basic illiteracy, and illiteracy, it makes you angry versus making you focused. And I always say, when you ever make an emotional decision, it's going to be the wrong decision. So you've got to. Our people need to respond, not react. And so I didn't want to go here, but I will say this. Over the weekend, I watched a documentary, and Steve Bannon, who is an advisor to this administration, said that if you want to fundamentally change a society, you first have to break it. Now, that explains everything about the last 3 or 4 years, if you're paying attention. And you've got to, and that only works if the person breaking it and replacing with something else is somebody who you trust is creating a software upgrade on what you had before. Unless it's God Almighty come back to earth, I don't believe in one person having a philosophy that's better than what was created by our founding fathers in 1776 and was upgraded by the civil rights movement in 1965 and so on and so forth. So there are games being played with our democracy, but if we're not informed, once again, it's what you don't know that's killing you, but you think you know. And if you're in a surviving mindset, by the way, you're depressed. African Americans in particular vote twice, when we're proud and when we're pissed. and we were proud. We were proud when Obama came around that first time. We voted. But in the middle of those two things, proud and peed off, is disconnection.
And people want you disconnected right now. They want you not to want to vote. They want you to feel like you can't do anything about the current situation, so that the people that they have supporting them go vote. And that's how they win elections, not just here, around the world.
And to your point that we talked earlier, John, about local feeding to the national or local feeding to the global, how we vote at the local level dynamically informs what becomes acceptable and what occurs at the national level if you're localizing the conversation to America. Your book, by the way, is so incredible that I really want to host you to a conversation with some of my friends in London who are doing a European conference, and I think your book applies everywhere. You say, you know, these are the skills that any of us can employ to succeed. I think what we're talking about right now is some of us who are disenfranchised by ignorance, following slavery. But it works so well for all 6 groups who you identified: those who succeed as immigrant population, and those who don't, for whatever enslavement or malconditions of the mind they may have. So I want to jump to those pillars. Can we go them one by one, because it's just so important.
Yeah. So, but I want to finish answering your question. Yes, I'm going to finish answering your question though about surviving, thriving, and winning, because it's really an important distinction. When you have a surviving mindset, you're depression adjacent. It's really important. And when you're depression adjacent, you don't believe in hope. And when you don't believe in hope, the creative part of the right side of your brain goes to sleep. The right side of your brain is where patents come from. Is where creativity lives. Is where dreaming lives. It's where decency lives. It's where love and emotion and compassion lives. And if this right side of your brain, the creative side, goes silent, because now you're in a surviving mode, okay? The logic that now locks in is not a logic that's based on aspiration, it's a logic based on surviving. And that becomes brute force. And now you have poor whites and poor blacks locking it up in a ridiculous armored battle where no one wins except the folks at the top. Okay, so now the thriving, the group is a middle-class group used to, it's about a paycheck. It's the getting business, getting a paycheck, getting an income, getting a vacation, getting a home, getting a new car, getting a girlfriend. It's like even owning a business, a small business owner could be part of the thriving group because they're trying to get a way of life, get a better standard of living than they did working for somebody else. But the winning,
they're in the middle of a come up.
Yes, but there's somebody else's come up. The somebody else is the winners. The winners are builders. And a winner knew they were a winner before they won anything. You knew you were a winner before you won anything, even when the world was pounding on you. You knew that God had a special place for you because there was the 5 pillars, which I'm about to pivot to now.
What was it Sergio Bonelli said? I will not put a second-class ribbon on a first-class neck.
Or as Quincy Jones said, to accentuate that, not 1 ounce of my self-worth or self-esteem depends on your acceptance of me. Or as Reverend Murray said, it's not what people call you, it's what you answer to that's important, and never ever answer out of your name, and to argue with a fool proves there are 2.
Mm-hmm.
So then that pivots to the 5 pillars. So how do you build more winners? Because this country was really, and the point I make here is that not everybody in this country, with the exception of the slaves and the Native American Indians and the poor whites who either were sent here against their will or were run out of here against their will. Everybody else, Janice, came here voluntarily with a dream. These are type A, I can't say this enough. These are type A personalities who had winning in their mindset before they hit that shore. And that's why America thrives. That's why we're the largest economy in the world, is you had all these people coming from all over the world. Even the folks jumping the fence from Mexico trying to get here, we jammed them up. They're aspirational too. They wanted a better life. We benefited from all that pulsating energy of people who say, I'm going to build something for my family, myself, my wealth. Now, to the extent that we got 100 million people who feel jammed up and left behind, you've got an anchor on the growth of America. And when that anchor grows, you're done. The country's storyline is over. Now the 5 pillars. Let me just read them.
Yes. And before you do the 5 pillars, John, it's going to be important for people to understand how you open this book. Can you just read the first paragraph or 2 of the book? Can you grab it? I see it there. Can you grab it?
Yeah, I've got the book here. You mean the of course you got the Ambassador Young piece. You mean the preface after that, I assume.
Yes, please. I think it's so important. And I think it's going to have people running out to get this book. I mean, it's look, you know me, I'm going to come real. We'll find another way to talk about your book if I ain't overwhelmed. I am flabbergasted. It's so beautiful.
Well, thank you. It means a lot coming from you because you're high frequency. I believe you mean from the preface. So I'm going to start there and then you can tell me.
Please.
This is not a book about the pandemic or the jobs crisis or Black Lives Matter or how to get more money or about getting rich or starting a business. But it's also about all of those things, ultimately. It's about your new winning mindset and about you winning in your lifetime. It's about reimagining a better way for us all to win. And now that's the preface. And of course,
that's so important. That's so important because, and I wanted you to read it. I wanted people to hear it from your voice because, John, so many times, and I'm seeing this a lot right now with the people I'm working with, especially those people who have started businesses right before the pandemic or were thinking about starting it in the midst of it. And they're different mindsets. Those who have started before the pandemic are trying to figure out how to survive through it. And those who are starting them in the midst of the pandemic are rolling in on some of the mindset. And with your book, I think they can be educated really well for it. It'll work well for both. You got your hand up. Let me shut up.
No, I was agreeing with you. I'm saying those coming on the back of the pandemic are riding a wave as we turn the corner. I was agreeing with you.
Yeah. And that's so important. So I'm really glad you were able to just set the frame for why I'm so excited that this book is for everybody. And I would say it's the aspirin. You know how the aspirin came out and it just helped everybody be better if they understood the other principles of health for their lives. It gave them that little pump up. And this book is the aspirin. Anyway, go on, John, the pillars.
That's my quote of the day. That's it. It's the aspirin. So here's the 5 pillars. And I need everybody to write this down. Write it down, try to refute it, try to disregard it, try to say I'm stupid, try to dismiss it, because I want you to beat it up. If you can't beat it up, I need you to adopt it and take it like aspirin every day. Here it is. Mm-hmm. Here are the 5 pillars. Massive education. As much education as you can shove down your throat. Formal, informal education, but massive education. Understanding the numbers.
Hey, John, and I know you're going to go back, but on that massive education,
mm-hmm.
all information isn't education.
Right.
And so leaning in and learning nothing but what you hear, as you talked about earlier, from your favorite tweeters or your favorite Instagrammers ain't necessarily going to assure you're learning. You may just be affirming past thoughts, which may not in fact be truths. Okay, I just needed to put that out there.
No, you got to decide whether this is a smartphone or a dumb phone.
Yeah.
And if you're using this to watch gangster rap videos and watch and read celebrity gossip 8 hours a day, it's a dumb phone. But if you're using this to figure out as what it is, a mini computer, and I mean, you can literally speak anything into this and find out the answers to the unlocked jewels of the world. And you can
I met women in Africa who built and run businesses on their smartphone.
That's it. So you're right.
Massive education.
Number 2, understanding the numbers. So Freedmen's Bank was created after the Civil War by Abraham Lincoln to teach us about money, financial literacy, ownership, small business ownership, financial, wealth creation. So the winners are trying to build wealth, which creates income. The thrivers are trying to create income to the exception of wealth. They're trying to create a lifestyle. They want cash flow. That's why people say, I want to get paid. I want to get rich. Let me get some of that money. But you can also end up broke because no one taught you the mindset of wealth creation, which is completely different. You build wealth in your sleep. Okay?
And I love that you're distinguishing between being rich and being wealthy.
I've also distinguished between a small business owner and an entrepreneur.
Mm-hmm.
A small business owner, fantastic, is trying to acquire a lifestyle. An entrepreneur is trying to build wealth, build an institution, build a company, build a dream. Which then creates wealth and tends to create cash flow. But that's not the entrepreneur that wake up every day going, oh, how do I get paid? That's not the way an entrepreneur thinks. So understanding the numbers, financial literacy. How does everything works on money? You can't run the church without money. You can't run a nonprofit without money. People say, oh, I don't want capitalism. I want to work for the government. I want to work for a nonprofit. Even if you want to distribute money like a socialist, you got to first collect it like a capitalist. 90% of all jobs come from the private sector. 100% of all legitimate wealth is not through criminal activity.
My brother, who served in the military for years and did some very high level work, once said to me when I was asking him questions, I'm never going to answer you specifically. Let me give you a detail that'll help you though. He said, freedom ain't free. It ain't never been free. It never will be free. We truly need people like you, he was talking about the entrepreneur, to do what you're doing to enjoy the freedom we have. It all cooperates.
It all correlates. When we had the Great Depression, they had to borrow money from J.P. Morgan. The federal government had to borrow money from J.P. Morgan, as in Chase. Mm-hmm. So all legitimate wealth comes from the private sector. And so we're not rich. People say, oh, I hate rich people. No, you don't. You hate rich people till you become rich. Mm-hmm. What you hate is a game system. The third thing is family structure and resilience.
And John, let me go back to something, because I know you up from nothing and you come out of the church too. And regardless of where you are from a religious perspective, I think you touch a lot of people spiritually. Some of that negative energy around the idea of rich or the idea of wealth comes from the limited education. You talked about massive education, understanding what wealth has done for those who have it and don't have it, like helping your government bring itself back forward, or paving streets, or setting up libraries like Carnegie. But we come from a place where I think sometimes we don't dig into, what was that scriptural statement, John, about it is harder for a rich man to get into heaven than a camel to get through the eye of a needle. Yeah. But it goes on to teach us what it's speaking about. It ain't saying that being rich in and of itself or being wealthy in and of itself is bad.
Right. It's the love of money, not money.
Yeah.
It's not money is not evil. It's the love of money.
Right.
That is evil. And wealth does not make you evil. It reveals your evilness. Whatever you are, money and wealth simply reveals that even more. If you're a nice person, it exemplifies that. If you're a jerk, it exemplifies that. It just simply amplifies whatever and whomever you happen to be.
Yeah. I thought it was important before we leave pillar number 2 to make sure that we're all seeing it from your eyes. You're not purporting wealth or riches just on the scale of personal fulfillment. Your book is leaning in on how you enjoy prosperity as a part of a larger economy.
People don't realize, Janice, that the Bible talked about money more than it talked about anything else. Mm-hmm. Okay? And in Proverbs, it says to be poor is not to not have anything in the Bible. To be poor is not to not do anything, and lazy hands make a man poor. And so, on the one hand, it's saying don't have a love for money. On the other hand, it's saying go build yourself and be industrious and lean in. God helps those who help themselves. And then once you are filled with my spirit, as you get, you'll give. As you get, you'll give. That's where philanthropy comes from. That's where charity comes from. That's from lifting. That's where job creation comes from, and lifting your brother and sister up to help them so they have some bootstraps. Okay. And by the way, the same churches that say, out of ignorance mostly, that money is bad, is turning to the wealthiest member of their congregation and saying, "Can you make an extra contribution this week to the weekly?"
Oh, John, you going in? You going in? Okay. Oh. Okay, John, so you went in there. Now, let's go to pillar number 3, okay?
Sure. Family structure and resiliency is number 3. Family structure and resiliency. What were we robbed from in slavery? Family structure. What were we robbed of psychologically? If the man was held down while his wife was abused, his inner resiliency, his inner.
Or even more recently, what are we robbed of when incarceration and application of the law is at issue?
Which you might call modern day slavery.
Yeah.
You might suggest that 100 years after slavery, you had commercial slavery. You had, if you were in a town after 6 p.m. and they imprisoned you, and then they said the only way you can work this off to go work for a company, and that's commercial slavery. So one could argue that Jim Crow was an extension for 100 years of slavery, and that the penal system is a disgusting holdover legacy from all of those periods.
And it occurred for Jews too, when they were put in concentration camps, providing labor for many of the brand names that we all enjoy today.
Yes, and it's very important that you mention the Jews, because I'm about to describe how they were different and how they came through trying to exterminate them, and they were solid before the Holocaust, and they were solid afterwards. I'm going to explain how in just a second. Massive education, number 1. 2, understanding the numbers. 3, family structure and resiliency. 4, self-esteem and confidence. Confidence is taking my skill and I'm confident about it. I'm competent with it, so I have confidence about it. That confidence is how I show up in the world. Self-esteem is how I esteem myself. It's self-love, so important.
And John, you know, my definition for confidence, we've talked about that before. My definition for confidence is the equitable marriage of wisdom with experience.
Yeah, yes, and that creates enormous
knowledge with experience. Knowledge with experience. Wisdom comes later.
Yeah, wisdom comes with time, exactly. Because you can actually have education in the short term that looks like wisdom. So, but self-esteem, you can't fake. You can have high confidence and low self-esteem. And that's what happened with Black.
Wow, say that again, John. Please say that again.
You can have high confidence and low self-esteem. And actually, the most dangerous person in the world one of the most dangerous, person no hope is most dangerous. One of the most dangerous, high confidence, power, wealth, position, and massively low self-esteem. So now they're selling fear, and they're selling manipulation, and they're selling intimidation, because they're afraid of the world. And so they versus impressing, they repress in order to keep themselves in a position of power. And there's, over the long arc of history, you can just name the leaders who tried to do that. That came from my book four books ago, Love Leadership: The New Way to Lead a Fear-Based World. So self-esteem and confidence was beat out of us, out of Native American Indians and poor whites. Role modeling is the 5th one. You model what you see. We got 40 million Black people trying to be 3,000 rap stars, 550 NBA stars, 1,000 professional athletes, and unfortunately a holdover of drug dealers and gang members, because that's the models of success that we see. Whereas my Jewish friends, there are only 15 million of them, 7.5 million of them in the U.S., and they're becoming everything from engineers to investment bankers to accountants to health professionals to computer technicians. They're in the wide gamut of the industries that's driving a $20 trillion economy. So they have a large funnel of opportunity for a limited supply of talent. We've got a large supply of talent for a limited funnel of opportunity.
And they're social, and they are social justice leaders, not just social justice pleaders.
Go into that, dig into that a little bit further. That's beautiful.
Yeah. Because I've witnessed personally some of the most beautiful givers to the education, to the financial stability, to the to the social acceptance and inclusion from wealthy Jewish people who I know, who have really given forward. They operate from a mindset of, not only do I live my faith, I question my faith over and over again to ensure that it is holding true and that I'm holding true to it. Now, I grew up where you don't question God, and you don't question, and you'll be in trouble if you do that. It's dishonorable, it's blasphemous. And I've met Jewish friends who operate to the exact opposite of that. I question it every day, and every day it answers me, and so delivering to social justice leadership, not just social justice leadership, circling back to your contention earlier, I believe, so well made, that that we do need currency in order to move things forward. I've rallied for political currency being your first exchange, that you invest wisely. And from that, with your 5 pillars, you can gain the financial currency you need. But I've seen Jewish people exercise social justice leadership in a way that assures that your second pillar and your third pillar, I believe, becomes an outcome of that.
Yeah.
Did that make sense? Did I hear what you're teaching me well?
No, you made perfect sense. And by the way, everybody, what people decide to do with their wealth is going to be different. For you, it's political. For somebody else, it might be social justice. For somebody else, it might be police reform. For somebody
entrepreneurship.
Entrepreneurship. And that's beautiful, right? But you got to create it before you can give it away. You can't pull from an empty well. Yom Kippur was just recently, I think it was September 27th, 28th, and I'd call my Jewish friends or ping them on that day, and they were in deep reflection. They took this seriously, to your point. And I question God, because God doesn't have a self-esteem problem. As long as you're skeptical and not cynical, I don't question his existence or her existence. I just want to, I just keep questioning, so that, because only through constructive friction do you grow. My parents,
you talk about that strong family structure. Yeah. I've said over and over again, John, you've heard me say it, that one of the greatest gifts I ever received in life was to have a mother and father who loved each other well. Yeah. And I remember growing up and having an aunt turn around and say, I was being smarty pants to keep questioning my mom. And my mom turned to her with a very loving voice and said, no, we encourage our children to question us. They trust us, so they question us to get the answers. And that stayed with me, even to this late stage in my life, as you and I are talking, that mom and dad really, they wanted us to ask them. You don't have to ask the streets, ask us. You're not going to be chastised because you ask us questions. And if you need to ask it over and over again, ask it until you've heard it well, ask it until you're answering it for yourself. And so I firmly believe that you have to question, and test that things still work. And I think asking questions is one of the strongest exhibits of faith or trust.
What you're seeing here in this study, Janice, is a confirmation of your point. All I'm doing with these books is asking questions. I'm asking questions about history, about the future, about your spirituality. That's what books do. They answer thoughtful questioning. You got to be curious. Quincy Jones put in the book, how'd you get so smart? I'm just nosy as hell. he said.
Half the time when I'm texting you or communicating with you, I'm asking you questions because I value that you're going to give me answers that are meaningful and truthful.
And I'm asking you back because I respect and admire you. And my biggest investors, by the way, in my free enterprise sort of my life, are Jewish investors. Is that an accident? I don't know. But I think it's noteworthy. And I think that they relate to our struggle. It's not a program. They get a return on their investment. But I think that there's a relationship there because of the pain they went through. I think I'm committing, though, this is turning into an hour podcast, which I love, but I think I'm committing author malpractice here, though, because I haven't dropped the mic on the core principles of the book. And here's what I have to say to the audience in the remaining 6 minutes. If you listen to everything here.
Did we complete our pillars? Did we complete our 5 pillars?
We did, but I didn't complete my job on the 5 pillars,
okay.
which is to question the pillars. So here's the thing. Your audience should be saying, yeah, but I don't have all 5 of those. Okay. By the way, why did the Jewish community succeed in spite of the Holocaust? They had all 5 of these: massive education, understanding the numbers, family structure and resiliency, self-esteem and confidence, and role models. But if you don't have 5 of these, that's fine. If you have any 3 of these or more, any 3 of them, you have massive education, family structure, and role models, you'll succeed. You've got family structure, self-esteem, and role models, you'll succeed. You have massive education, the numbers, and family structure, you'll succeed. You got massive education, self-esteem, and understanding the numbers, you'll succeed. But if you have 3 or less of these, it's not that you can't succeed, it's just really tough. Because the surviving mindset tends to take over, because now you get frustrated because you're just spinning your wheels in the mud. So we've got to create a system, house by house, block by block, neighborhood by neighborhood, and for the country. This is how America won, Janice. This was America's original immigrant business plan.
And by the way, we didn't have all 5 of those. We built toward them. I love, John, one of the things that we can't leave this conversation without you just espousing on is the order of those pillars as you spoke to them. I think feed to each other in the right approach as well. It's not just randomly thrown out there. Like you say, any of them, a combination of 3, you're winning. 3 out of 5 is a win. Yeah. Here's the thing, the order that you teach them to us, I think is really important and allows us, even if we don't gain all 5 for ourselves, we gain it for our children or those we love or those who are in the journey with us.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think of course I agree with that. And I put them in this order for a reason. I'm just trying to make sure that people don't get frustrated. I was talking to T.I. yesterday, a friend of mine, and he was saying, John, people don't believe, man. They're like, they see you and me and they listen, they say, hey, that sounds cool, but they don't believe that can happen to them. So you gotta put the food where they can grab it. So I'm just trying to make sure that people feel this is attainable. That's why I say any 3 of these will work. Fine, I'd love for you to get them in this order, but don't get frustrated if it's not. Your family structure may be completely screwed up. Okay, but you can get massive education. You can get it through the internet. You can understand the numbers. You can actually teach yourself financial literacy or come to Operation Hope. You can through that gain self-esteem and confidence, because education and understanding the math gives you self-esteem, and self-esteem will engender confidence. And then through that, you can then start to pick your role models better, because if you hang around 9 broke people, you'll be the 10th. See, I just want people to understand that there's a logic table to this, and they get in this rhythm, it won't fail them. And this is part of again, in where I started. I think we're in a 3rd reconstruction for the next decade in this country. And we're all actors in it. I've launched a new Marshall Plan. I'm about to launch the forum where we want you to speak, by the way. We're about to launch a couple of initiatives, which I can't say right now, which are going to, I think, fundamentally reshape Black America over the next decade of filling some of these holes up. But this is the mindset piece. This is the piece that I'm most passionate about, because when I didn't have any money, I had hope.
Wow. And hope, health, ownership, prosperity, and engagement. You are all of those things. You represent your name so well
Thank you.
And I am just honored, honored, honored to be a friend and to be at your table. John, we got to go 4 for 4. We did it before. Let's see if anything's different. What are the 4 things that you wish you'd known earlier that you know now? A lot of it's in your book, so it's kind of a jump for you.
Other people's opinions really don't matter. Hurt people. Just because you're successful doesn't mean you're smart. Ignore the noise.
Hey, John, you're having dinner, 4 people at your table today, no matter when they were on earth.
Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., Nelson Mandela, Jesus Christ, sorry, Jesus first, and Mary.
Wow.
Mother.
Wow. Well, you know what? I'm going to cook or serve up in there because I want to be present to that conversation. John, what are the 4 books that you recommend be read? And I'm going to put that first one up there for you, Up From Nothing. What are the other 3?
I actually read my own book and was like, wow. I mean, I've been away from it, you know.
Yeah.
And I'm not impressed with most things I do. I'm actually pretty down on most of the stuff I do. I read it, I was like, wow, this is really good. The 7 Spiritual Laws of Success by Deepak Chopra. He teaches detached involvement. It's brilliant. Mere Christianity by C.S. Lewis, 1947, when it's published. Dr. Scott Peck, The Road Less Traveled.
That's 4. That's 4. Yours is
okay,
leading now.
Yeah.
Yeah, Up From Nothing is.
I love books.
Yeah. And John, last 4 for 4. What 4 things are you listening to right now, musically?
I don't know the artist name. I just, I don't know the artist name. But they're from all genres. I listen to it and I feel it, and then I tend to download it. There's a young lady now, just because I have it right in front of me, La Portia Renee. I never heard her before. I downloaded all of her stuff, which I heard once I heard one song. I'm all over the map. I'm from R&B to pop to rap. Like, I love Jay-Z's 444 album because it's about financial literacy. I'm over at jazz and I'm over at classical. I'm all over the place.
You've been listening to Quincy.
Oh, Quincy's the man. I mean, Quincy is iconic. And Quincy is in all categories. He's got more Grammys than anybody in the history of the world.
And so that's 3. And so if you round out your 4 with what you're listening to, spiritually or religiously, who are you hearing?
I mean, I always listen to Howard Hewitt, who's one of my dear friends, and he's.
Oh my goodness! Does he minister? And he sings that at every concert, doesn't he?
Yeah, and he's got some spiritual songs that are not as well known as "Say Amen."
Say Amen. Yeah.
Chills down your spine.
Well, child, all I can say is amen to you, John.
He comes to Atlanta, by the way. He stays here in this house.
Listen, you are a friend. You are a brother. You are a mentor. You are a good person. And I am so grateful that you came back to talk with the family about Up From Nothing. I know so many people are going to just be enriched. I mean, I am learning so much. And it's the kind of thing that you just can't put down. It's so beautifully written. It's so honest. And as you said, your goal was that Pookie and them can understand it, and so can someone at the highest level. I think it's going to be the common thread for all of us in how we see succeeding. It's the aspirin, and I'm going to take mine. John.
That's a great quote. Can I use that quote?
Yeah. Please, listen. It's been a joy listening to you and learning from you. And let me just say this, my brother, I love you. Thank you so much.
I love you back. You're a role model for a generation. People don't really appreciate who they're looking at when they're looking at you. They're looking at a pioneer. Janice, you are you don't walk on water, but you know where the stones are. You're a bad sister.
Well, Thank you, John Hope Bryant, messenger. Thank you.
God bless you.